Is the secession of one or more of the states, in other words, a state or more, leaving the Union, leaving the United States, is that possible? In my exclusive interview with Judge Roy Moore, I asked him. I'm Randall Terry. This is Voice of Resistance.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance. Here's your host, Randall Terry.
Welcome to the program, friend. This is the third and final part of a series that we've put together from a nearly hour-long interview that I had the privilege of conducting with Judge Roy Moore, the Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court, one of the most brilliant legal minds in the country, and somebody who actually understands the link between God's law and human law. If you've missed any of these episodes, you can watch them online. We are in a crisis. We are in deep trouble. I believe that it is possible that in our lifetimes we could see the breakup of this union. I might be wrong. I hope I'm wrong if we can be restored. But other great empires have gone the way of all flesh. Why shouldn't ours when we are offending the Almighty to such a degree? Watch this interview and hope you are challenged and blessed by what you see. I'll ask you, would you ethically think that it would be appropriate? Do you think it would be within their right to do it?
I think that all officials have a right not to obey an unlawful order.
But do they have the right to secede?
Well, secession is something that hasn't been brought up. Thomas Jefferson brought it up back in 1825. As a matter of fact, New England was one of the first states to talk about secession. So, I don't think it's time to secede now. I think it's time to stand up for rights. You're talking about something that people have no ideas about. They won't even stand up for their rights. When they let a majority of one on the court dictate that marriage can be something different than it's ever been. We're not talking about secession. We're talking about just standing up for your rights. We've been deceived in what the Constitution is. We don't understand the Constitution anymore. And if you don't understand the Constitution, how can you understand anything else?
Do you think that this ruling could unravel the Republic or unravel our liberties?
I think it's going to destroy the nation.
All right, so therefore, if this has the potential to destroy the nation, then why not get out of the nation? Why not say, we're done? We're done. We are not going to be a part of this.
Well, that's just, that's something.
I mean, that does follow logically.
Yeah, but I don't think you're going to find anybody that wants to secede.
There's people talking about it in Texas.
Well.
There are people talking about it. And I've never even given it a moment's thought until this decision. This did something to the country, to the fiber of the country. We're not a free people anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that we're a free people?
We're supposed to be a free people. And if this carries out the way I think it's going to carry out, it's going to be very doubtful because there's going to be serious questions about our religious liberty. And I am quoting, basically, I think, Justice Thomas that said the very thing.
He really focused on that this is
a complete
assault on religious liberty. He said the majority decision
threatens the religious liberty of our nation has long sought to protect. Alito said it would be used to vilify those who refuse to assent.
And to stamp out all resistance to the new orthodoxy.
Yeah. And Roberts said today's decision creates serious questions about our religious liberty. That's the Chief Justice of the United States. That's not me. That's his words.
Well, a lot of the journalists, one of the reasons that I wanted to do this interview was to let you be heard, not in 12-second sound bites, or not so that some malicious journalist could pull a quote out of context, but to give for you to have a paced atmosphere in which you could lay out the reasoning of why we're in danger, why this is against the law, why it threatens our liberties, and what that means. So, you're a judge. You have a law degree. I'm a business owner. Tell me what's going to happen to me. Tell me what's going to happen to me when I say, I'm not catering this homosexual wedding. And then
quite frankly, I think if you say that, then you're going to be hit with a fine in federal court, they'll go into federal court on you. And I think that's what's the danger of
the Interstate
losing
Commerce
religious
Clause
liberty.
is the way that they did away with the Jim Crow laws. They said, look, if you're open for business, people can come from another state to sit at your lunch counter. You're open for business for everyone, and you can't discriminate. So that's the line of logic that I see them using. And then if I say, I'm not paying the fine, I'm not doing the wedding, and in the fear of God, like the apostle says, whether it's right in the sight of God to obey you or God, I'm obeying God.
That's
so then
already
what?
been brought up in other states, and they've been taken in and threatened with loss of their livelihood. In fact, I've got a case right here that.
But is it within a judge's purview to say, Mr. Terry, I don't think you understand the authority of this court. You're going to either pay this fine or you're going to sit in jail until you reconsider. Could it happen?
It could happen, yeah. And listen
Do you
to this.
think do you think it could happen, or do you think it will happen?
I think it will happen, yes.
You have two choices. I mean, you can try to raise your children by design, or you will raise them by default. There are no perfect parents. We're going to get it wrong sometimes. If we have a plan, we've got a better chance of getting it right in the long run.
There is something deep within the heart of every human being that longs for parental acceptance and approval. When does a boy become a man?
Get a group of guys around and ask them that question.
I don't think there's a certain age. Some men stay boys their whole life.
I would say, 16, 18 years old?
Wow, that's a good question.
When they get bar mitzvah.
Well, I think when he has a child. So I just became at 56, 56 years old.
Without the power of the Holy Spirit changing us and giving us power over our sin, we can't hope to be the dads that our kids need us to be.
It took me 14 years to write it. 4 rewrites, countless edits. I poured my heart and soul into Dragon Slayers. At points, a very inspiring and painful book to write. I encourage you to go to our website and look at the reviews that we have gotten from readers of this book, and then avail yourself. It's an allegory, and I promise you, you'll be inspired. So for the point of stopping and having everyone take a deep breath, do you think that there will be people who go to jail for contempt of court who just say, I'm not doing this?
Well, let me just read what this lady here in Washington said. And she was offered by the attorney that, Ferguson, I think it was. She said this, she offered to pay a fine of $2,001 and they would dismiss the charge. She said, your offer reveals that you don't really understand me or what this conflict is all about. Stutzman explained, it's about freedom, not money. I certainly don't relish the idea of losing my business, my home, and everything else that your lawsuit threatens to take from my family. But my freedom to honor God and doing what I do best is more important. You chose to attack my faith and pursue this not simply as a matter of law, but to threaten my very means of working, eating, and having a home. If you're serious about clarifying the law, then I urge you to drop your claims against my home, business, and other assets. This kind of thing is going on in our country today, yes.
Well, it's going to exponentially increase with this ruling.
It has that potential.
What would you say to state legislators and state legislatures around the country? Because thank God that the state legislators are usually in the hands of pretty good people right now. Our federal Congress is lost, but there are some really good, godly Christian men and women.
There's some good people out in the legislatures, yeah.
So what
I would
you say
tell
to
the
them?
legislatures to look at the way the Constitution would address this problem. That's under Article 5. Article 5 says there's 2 ways to amend the Constitution. Amendment to the Constitution will overcome the President of the United States, the legislature of the United States, and the Supreme Court of the United States. If 2/3 of both houses of Congress, the Article 5 is very explicit, saying it can occur by 2/3 of both houses of Congress recommending to the states, which if approved by 3/4.
3/5, isn't it? Is it 3/5 or 3/4? I don't remember. I shouldn't contradict a sitting Supreme Court. Right, I apologize.
3/4 thereof, then it would become a constitutional amendment. George Mason saw the other problem. What if Congress becomes corrupt and won't pass such a recommendation? Then it says, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid as to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states or by 3/4 in conventions thereof, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as one of the other mode of ratification.
So there could be a federal constitutional convention, and then states should have their own constitutional conventions, or the legislatures of those states could say yes, what they agreed to at the constitutional convention, to have a constitutional amendment that says marriage is between a man and a woman.
It's not a constitutional convention, and that's the first fallacy that many people make.
I thought it was called that.
No, it's not called that. Read Article 5. They call it that. They call it a constitutional convention. But that's not what the Constitution says was. That implies that they're going to change the Constitution. This is not what that Article 5 says. It says, and you can read it right here. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to the Constitution, or on the application of the legislatures 2/3 of several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution when ratified by 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as one of the other mode of ratification may be approved by Congress.
Well, I agree with you. It doesn't say that. I think that they're just using it as shorthand.
Well, they're using a shorthand term that implies they're going to change the Constitution. But Article 5 says it shall be valid as to all intents and purposes as part of the Constitution. So it's not changing the Constitution.
Do you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes, and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today. One of the greatest joys and passions that I have had for almost my entire life is music. And one of the best times that I had was putting together some albums in Nashville of songs that I wrote. One of the albums is called Dark Sunglasses Day. This is a country album, a lot of love songs and patriotic music. We've made it available to you online, and I hope that you'll go take a listen. You might be pleasantly surprised. You might even find yourself singing along. Would you support amending the Constitution so that Supreme Court judges were elected and to a term, not these lifetime appointments?
I would first rather see that the federal district courts were elected or served terms.
But not the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, it's because it is the original part of the Constitution. Now, I realize that they can change that.
We can change it.
Yeah, you can change it.
But the Constitution also is who authorizes, or what authorizes the president to appoint federal district judges.
That's right. No, well, Congress is the one that controls whether federal district judges even exist. The only existent court, a federal court, under the Constitution is the United States Supreme Court. All of the federal courts and courts of appeal are designed by Congress. They can eliminate them if they wish.
Or they could
So
have
to go back to an understanding,
an election.
Yeah, to go back to and understand the Constitution, you got to understand that these courts serve at the pleasure of Congress, and they can they have a lot of power over them.
Speak to Christians who are not in office right now. There's young men and young women who are just so upset, and some of them are saying, "I want to change this." And this is a legal matter. And to quote a very wise person, this is either going to be solved by a gavel or a gun. I mean, something is going to give here. So if they're saying, God forbid we have civil war, God forbid there be violence, I want to get in office so that we can remedy the evils of this country. Speak to them. Speak to their heart.
Well, I think they should. I think that Christians should serve in public office. That's the only way we're going to maintain the country we have. And if this opinion goes into effect, it has an attempt to drive Christians from office. People that issue licenses are not going to want to serve and be under the thumb of a federal judge. And that's the danger of this opinion, because it threatens religious liberty, and people tend to shy away from it.
And drives
Christians out of public office.
So what do you say to those who are pondering it right now? What's a word of encouragement you'd give? You've been in some brawls.
I say God is the author of what happens in our lives, and we're to stand for truth. And standing up for God in law and in government is a noble thing, and God will bless it.
50 years from now, if you and I are not here, which is likely, and someone is rifling through American history because XYZ happened 20 years from now as a result of this case, what do you want to say to those people 50 years from now? If somebody digs this interview up.
I'd say the same thing Dred Scott said. The opinion in Dred Scott by Benjamin Curtis. It said that in 1857, and that was a lot more than 50 years ago. 1957 would have been 100 years. He said, when a strict interpretation of the Constitution, according to the fixed rules which govern the interpretation of laws, is abandoned, and the theoretical opinions of individuals are allowed to control its meaning, we have no longer a Constitution. We're under a government of individual men who, for the time being, have the power to declare what the Constitution is according to their own views of what they think it ought to mean. And that simply means that if people get in office and start ruling by their own feelings, you have no longer a law like the Constitution to go by. You're under a government of individual men. Now, Dred Scott was overturned, as you said earlier, Justice Roberts said earlier, on the battlefields of the Civil War and by constitutional amendment. And this amendment, this ruling by the Supreme Court is as pernicious as that was ever thought to be. I think it's a perilous time for our country.
I do too. I think we're in danger. I have been a leader in the pro-life movement for 30 years. And sadly, we have not prevailed in our goal to make it a criminal act to kill an unborn baby. There's reasons why we have failed. I wrote this book, A Humble Plea, to Catholic bishops, to evangelical clergy, and to lay people, explaining where we went wrong and what we have to do to prevail. We've made this available as a PDF online for free. I encourage you to go and download your own copy. We have put together what we call an online university for you. Now that's a highfalutin way of saying that we have a pretty significant library of material, books, tapes, videos that are there for you for free. Why are we doing this? Because America is desperate for new leaders, and because this material could help you to become the leader that you and God want you to be. Check it out and enjoy it. James Madison said, "The people of the United States owe their independence and their liberty to the wisdom of seeing in the minute tax of 3 pence on tea the magnitude of the evil comprised in the precedent. Let them exert the same wisdom in watching against every evil lurking under plausible disguises and growing up from small beginnings. I appreciate you giving us so much time. And is there anything else that you want to say to the people? Anything that's on your heart that you want to say to the people that are watching it in closing?
Well, this is probably the only country ever established on the laws of nature and nature's God. And people don't understand what that means. They think it means that it's frivolous words or something. Those were legal terms under John Locke and William Blackstone. The laws of nature and nature's God. Not only were we able to declare our independence because of the laws of nature and nature's God, but James Madison, the chief architect of the Constitution, said that we were entitled to have a Constitution because of the laws of nature and nature's God. I think he said that in Federalist 43. And those had a very specific meaning. That means that God's law is a higher law. And we historically, the chief architect of the Constitution recognized it. Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, recognized it. And we should recognize, too, that the Declaration, for example, which recognizes that God gives rights and government's role is to secure those rights for us, is law. Now, many lawyers and judges say, oh, I just made a mistake. That's not law. Well, if you go to the United States Code and you look up organic laws, you'll find the Constitution of the United States. And you'll find before that, the Declaration of Independence. It is part of our organic law. And I don't care who wants to cross me on that. You can go to the United States Code and turn to the page and find it. And so we should regard these things more seriously, because if God gives rights and government's role is to secure those rights, when government dismisses God out of the equation and pretends to get rights, we suffer accordingly. And that's what we're facing in our country, whether it be with abortion, same-sex marriage, or anything else. If government pretends to give rights, it'll always take one away.
Well, you referenced, and forgive me for this addendum, but you referenced the phrase in the Declaration that says that governments exist to protect the rights that
secure
are God-given.
the rights God gave us.
Right. And when a government becomes injurious or becomes a threat to those rights, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish.
And to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
Are we headed there?
Well, I think that's where we were in 1776. And if government is not securing the rights God gave us, which obviously when you take marriage and it's an institution ordained of God, they're taking it and redefining it, that's not really securing it, is it?
No. So is it our duty to alter, to abolish? That's the issue. It's frightening.
Prudence indeed will dictate. The government's long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly our experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such governments to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrained them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpation, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world.
If we were to take out the King of Britain and
if
insert the
place
Supreme
the United
Court
States
there,
Supreme Court, it seems fitting, doesn't it?
it does.
Okay.
Long life to you.
Well, thank you, sir.
Friend, I put the question to you. 50 years from now, what will our children and our grandchildren, maybe our great-grandchildren, what will they be saying about us? About what we did, how we fought, or about what we didn't do and how we surrendered? Please fight like the survival of this nation depends upon your actions. You see what's on the screen below you. If you want to learn more, if you want to help us, go to our website. But for the love of God and the love of truth, fight against this monstrous evil.
you.